Wow. So, yeah, it has been like a long time since we've spoken. Trying to remember when's the last time we spoke. But
Was it the Bayern game, or was it before Bayern or after?
mm, maybe after Bayern. I don't know. It's been a while. I mean, we've been on it. I know we didn't talk after Chelsea. I know
I
we
feel
didn't
like
talk.
maybe it was after the Villa or before the Villa game or before that little the
Yeah,
two maybe.
weird time. Around that weird time. Um,
Yeah.
Speaking of the Villa game, uh, you know, Villa have qualified for Champions League, so congratulations to them. I did see kind of, a lot of Arsenal fans saying that the reason why we're not winning the league is because we couldn't score a single goal against Villa, and we definitely did not score any goals against Villa. Both games were really strange, where it's not like we got outplayed, but we just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, and then we made errors at the back. And everybody's trying to microanalyze, like, which game was it? Which game was it? Um, what's your feeling on the whole? It was this game versus that game. Like, I've even seen people say it's because we didn't actually really go after City. We kind of just sat in a low block and we had to win that game. Like, is it just one specific game or a game or two, or is it just that we dropped too many points potentially? Like,
Yeah, I mean, and we dropped too many points to finish on a really, really high points tally, right? Even with the points dropped, we've still got an incredible points tally, which wins the league most
yeah,
seasons. So I mean, I more think about particular incidents as opposed to games. So I look back at like Fulham at home, from the corner, poor defending from the corner when I think Paulino scored.
yeah,
Uh, I look at Gabriel Jesus away at Aston Villa, like that. For me, I don't want to make excuses, but I feel like there's a penalty there that we've seen given 100 times this season. I feel like Newcastle away. I look at the way they scored the goal. I look at missed chances at home via Aston Villa. I look at missed chances at home versus West Ham. So yeah, for me, it's like these little incidents stick out, like that Trossard moment at the Etihad, or so yeah. But I'm not, because it's like, what defeat do you pick to say ruined your title? Do you know what I mean? It's like you can pick Aston Villa and then you can go on the whole Emery thing, and Emery, stopped us from winning the league. You could pick Spurs at home when Jorginho comes on the pitch and has a little brain fart, or Gabriel Jesus misses a chance. Like, there's so many little moments that could have potentially gotten us over the line. But who knows, if we beat Villa, do we go away at City and play a low block, or do we get too excited and just open ourselves up and City come and absolutely dominate us because they know they have to win? So it really, really depends which one you're gonna go on. But what's annoying is that, yeah, the teams we've lost to are, respectfully, yeah, they're not near us in terms of quality and points total, and that's the really annoying thing.
yeah. I think when you see that there's maybe three or four, maybe even five games where you potentially could have done better, that it becomes more about, like you said, themes than actually like the actual games. Like, I felt like there are just too many games this season, even in Europe, where we had good spells of possession and dominance, and we just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. Um, Liverpool at home in the FA Cup, West Ham at home, um, Aston Villa home and away. All four of those games for me were very similar. First half, we're battering them, but something happened after the first 20 minutes and we don't score. It's almost like we just fall apart and then give away very like cheap goals at the end. And so I just feel like that's something that needs to be looked at for next season. It's how can we make sure that that doesn't happen? Now, I have seen people say, like, well, most of those games also coincide with Jesus starting, which is interesting. Jesus or Zinchenko were involved, so is there, Arteta's love for them, making him make bad decisions. But ultimately, like, I just feel like when we're in games like that where we just need a goal, we're still lacking somebody that can
Mm.
put the ball in the back of the net in those types of situations. And so hopefully in the transfer window, we look at that because we still don't quite have that. Let's see what people are saying in the comments. Saida says, I also think Arteta has to improve his in-game management. Although we hardly went a goal down in games where we needed a goal to win or equalize, his substitutions weren't effective. What are your feelings on that? The whole substitutions not being effective. I've complained about this every year, that when our subs come on, now people be like, well, we have the most, goals from substitutes. And yeah, I'm talking about in games where we need a result, not games where we're already ahead or, whatever, because our subs will come on and, like Martinelli did against Crystal Palace, the game was already won. It was 3-0. And then he scored those 2 goals, that were pretty much like gimme goals anyway. It's not those, it's when we're behind, like Saida says, why is it that they don't make a difference? What are your, like, do you feel the same about that?
Yeah, no, I do. I think it's a great point, and I think Arteta has to improve that. But I think you can only trust what you what you trust, or you can only trust who you trust. And ultimately, he doesn't trust those bench players. And now he did sign some of those players, and he did give contract extension to those players. So there is an argument as to why he did that. But we understand that when we signed the likes of, just say like Fabio Vieira, it was 2-3 seasons ago when we were still kind of fighting to break into that top 4. And you maybe take gambles on players who you think, oh, do you know what, 35, 40 million pounds, this guy could be a good player in 2 or 3 years' time, and he could help us get to where we need to be. And you take a gamble on a Lokonga or a Tavares because that's where we were at the time. I think now, not to digress too much, I think now the signings in the past year have been really, really good, and they've really helped us get to the next level, even though we've just missed out. But ultimately, yeah, Arteta should have used his bench more. But I mean, I look at Old Trafford on Sunday. We weren't playing well. Tactically, we were just a little bit out of shape. We weren't dominating the ball against a really poor Man United team. And he was really, really reluctant to make a change, like really reluctant. And that kind of said it all to me. He doesn't trust Emil Smith-Rowe, doesn't trust Vieira, trust Jorginho, but I think he only trusts Jorginho in certain game states, and he's a little bit scared sometimes of bringing him on too early if the game is end-to-end or too fast-paced. So, yeah, it's good. It's a good point, and I hope that when we seem to say every season, right, we just need 2 or 3 players, but I think this summer it's like you get those 2 or 3 signings right, and I think we will, because I think we're now at the level where we can probably go and get a Kimmich, or we can go and get someone of a real high grade who's proven. Then I think that's what will see us get over the line. When you look at our bench, there's too many, just good players, and you have to be really, really good to make the difference. And look at Man City. Grealish isn't getting a look in sometimes, and he's a really good player. Do you know what I mean? Doku is struggling for minutes sometimes. He's a really good player, and it's about that. And if you can't bring on Nelson in the 80th minute because you don't trust him, or Emil Smith-Rowe or Nketiah, then yeah, then that means the project's kind of outgrown them. So it wasn't a mistake to give those players a contract extension in that respect. You protect the value, you can still sell them. But when you look at your bench and you don't trust it, then you're in a little bit of a pickle. So yeah, he has to improve on that.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we'll ever be in a situation where we have the exact same quality on the starting 11 and the bench as City. I just don't think it's financially possible. But I do think that some hard decisions need to be made of are we maximizing the squad positions? You only have a certain amount, and I feel like 1 through 16, 18 have got to be very strong players. They have to be people that you can rely upon. And there's a comment here from Sammy, who, thank you so much for your comment, saying why am I always crapping on Trossard? I would say that no offense, I feel like you may not actually watch a lot of my content if you think I'm crapping on Trossard. If there's anyone that backs Trossard, it's me. So it's not. I it's Trossard. I think is the quintessential definition of what you want coming off of the bench.
That's a good example of a really good signing, isn't it? It's a good example of a really good cost-effective signing, and that's what we need more of. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's Trossard has really come to the forefront as somebody that we trust starting games. Like, I know there's still some people that don't love him on the wing because he's not pacey or whatever, but at the end of the day, he does what's important in football, which is scoring goals. Is the hardest thing to do in the game, is to score goals. That's what he does. He scored some massive goals for us this season, which is really like taken away like like that huge blow of Martinelli not being on his game, so we need more of those types of players in the team, but we don't have them. Like, it's so funny that it ends up being, Jorginho and Trossard, two players that I was like devastated that we bought last January. I was like, I cannot believe it. No way. You go from Caicedo and Mudryk to Jorginho and Trossard, but those two have shown what the levels need to be. But there's like 3 or 4 players chilling on the bench where there's just, we either know they're not good enough, or, we're
Yeah,
questioning or whatever. And Mikel, like you said, is very reluctant to make changes. He really doesn't want to change anything. And so tactically, I think he's quite stiff mid-game, but also he doesn't know when to pull the right trigger to get something. And yeah, it's just,
yeah.
it we needed goals in some of these games. And
I think especially in the cup competitions, I mean, that's what drives me freaking crazy is even when we go back to like Europa League games at home when we were being knocked out and we were still playing the same shape. And I think in one game we took a Aubameyang off for Nketiah rather than going 2 up front. And even against Bayern, I mean, it's a perfect example of you need to score a goal and we are just side to side, still standing our patterns. And I'm like, what the
yeah,
fuck are we doing? Get someone in the box, get your defenders in the box and get the ball in the box and cause some chaos. Almost like how Munich scored against or didn't score against Madrid in
yeah,
the last leg. Do you know what I mean? And that's one thing that really annoys me is almost sometimes there's a lack of emotion in Arteta's management, and it needs to be more emotional. It needs to be, oh, we are about to go out of a cup competition here, so let's fucking go for it. And if we concede another goal, we concede another goal. We're at that stage where we need to score. So no risk, no reward, and we've seen the same results in cup games in terms of we just pitter out. Like
yeah.
it just pitters out, and it's like, oh, we didn't actually play that bad. So, yeah, but we didn't really go for it, did we? We didn't do enough, and that's a huge regret, especially in the Champions League, because I think that game was there, and we didn't show who we were. We kind of just hid a little bit,
And that's
and I think that falls on Arteta as well.
that's the worst, when you go out of a competition and you don't even feel like you showed the best of yourself. Like, it just feels like that just wasn't us. But
Yeah,
at the same time, that is who we've been this season. Like, there is a stark difference, I feel like, between 2022, 2023 Arsenal and 2023, 2024 Arsenal. That team was much more emotional. That team, if they went down, they went back, scored just like that. Boom, just like that. Like, last year's team, I do think, played on emotion a lot more than this one, but this one does not tap into the emotion at all, like, at all.
yeah. I mean, there's a difference, isn't there? Because defensively, we're much more solid this season, so there isn't that need to quickly score that equaliser. Because in most games, we're in control, so that's a really positive thing. And that's us being less emotional or more sensible, which I like. But there are sometimes in games when you have to go for it. You just have to go for it, and
Yeah,
to keep your shape and everyone in your back four for me is carnage. And I know it's old school, but you put your big centre halves in the box and you play the ball long and you look for knockdowns and try and win corners or try and win fouls and stuff like that. So yeah, you're right with the comparison to last year. Probably a bit of that comes from changing players like Ramsdale as well to Raya. You have someone a little bit more calmer, less emotional.
yeah.
So I
I
think, and
do
that's gone.
I was just gonna say, I do think that, like, when you remove, like, think about the players that are now in those positions. I do think that, like, the Jesuses and the Zinchenkos are a lot more emotionally driven. Like, they
Mm.
play on their emotions. Their highs are super high, but their lows are really low. Where you have like Kai Havertz and like Kivior or whoever, or Tommy, who it's like they are more
It's
calm.
controlled. Yeah,
Yeah, more
controlled.
controlled,
Yeah,
but I don't think their highs are as high, if that makes sense. Like, they can't tap into that sometimes. And so they have to find that equilibrium a little bit, because I do feel like in order for us to, like, we have to not be afraid to concede. Like Tony is saying, like, the scared to concede thing, it feels like a thing this season. And I think it's kept us from like really showing the best of ourselves. And maybe that's also looking up front and seeing what you have up there. Because sometimes I do feel like psychologically you're less afraid to concede if you know that you have some crazy attackers up there that you know are gonna score the goals. And yeah, we've scored a lot of goals this season, but some of those have come from unlikely sources or players that were not used to scoring goals. It hasn't always been like straightforward this season. Beginning of the season, it was set piece FC. So maybe there's a little bit of like we cannot concede because
I
guys
think
here are not scoring goals like that.
yeah, I think Arteta's is very much Arteta is very much a numbers man, right? He's very much a numbers man, and I think he tells the team, if you keep a clean sheet and we follow these patterns of play, we will score goals. He will say, if you keep it solid, give it to Odegaard, Saka cuts in, puts a cross in back post, keeps doing it, repetition, the goals will come. And I think the team play in that way, in that robotic, structured way, which I'm kind of okay with. But in the same token, like you say, sometimes what Jesus gives you is some chaos, and Zinchenko gives you that player who goes into midfield and plays those passes, and like, yeah, it just makes it a little bit more exciting to watch and also to create a chance. So I think that's one thing that we have to improve on. But in the same respect, who knows? If you start doing that, then we start conceding more goals again. So it's one of those ones where it's a bit of a catch-22. But in certain scenarios, 100%, when we need to go for it, we should fucking go for it.
Yeah. Blaze says, people forget also first half of the season, Arsenal wasn't good enough in defeat. Like we had games back to back where we lost to West Ham at home and Fulham away in December hurt us more than Aston Villa at home. I'll be honest with you. I do agree with that. Like if I had to diagnose the problem from this season, I don't think it's that we dropped like 3 points against Aston Villa at home in between two hard Champions League games. I think we were so like, I don't think people realize how mental it would have been if we had not lost a single game. Like that would have been insane. We were always dropping points. It's who we dropped it to. I do think is making people think it's more that. It's the most recent time that we dropped points, and it's who we dropped it to. It's like, well, it was that. I don't actually think that matters as much as dropping points to West Ham at home and then turning right around, going ahead against Fulham, and then somehow losing that. Like, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you made a good point too, as well. Like that, I also have been thinking too is like, just because, like, even if we had beaten West Ham and Fulham, how would we have reacted to being ahead this whole time going into the
Yeah.
second half of the season? Would we have been able to be in the Champions League and play from in front? We know how we are when we're ahead. We're not the best when we're ahead and people are chasing us. So there's no guarantee that just winning those games means that we just win the league. We don't know what would have happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, and Fulham away is one of the games that really annoyed me because we were just miles off it. We just
Yeah.
weren't there. It's probably the only game this season where I look back and think, well, we absolutely definitely deserve to lose that. The others kind of swings and roundabouts in terms of how the result goes. If we score first, they're probably different games. But the Fulham away one was one that we were way off the pace. And I think when we started speaking again in December on this podcast, we said, we're going to have to almost be perfect to win the league.
Yeah.
And we almost have been perfect, and that's it. So it's what game you want to accuse of costing you the title. But I think if we take a step back, we can also be happy with how the season's panned out. But quite disappointed, obviously, at the start of the season, the fact that we didn't replace the Xhaka role quick enough, and then we experimented too much in certain positions. When you go back to the first game of the season, you playing Thomas Partey as an inverted right back, like in hindsight, you're thinking, fucking hell, it's the first, like, what are we doing here? Do you know what I mean? And I get it. Like, I get it. There was a Gabriel situation kind of in the air, right, with maybe a potential move, or there was something behind the scenes that we didn't know about. So I think Arteta was trying to teach Gabriel a lesson. But just the whole thing of thinking, right, we know it's going to take a lot to beat City to win the league. And in game one, we're kind of experimenting. And I found that a little bit confusing. And even though we won that first game, but that first part of the season was very much chop and change, Arteta trying to figure out what works. And there was injuries, of course, and that changes how you how you adapt. But that's really annoying because I feel like if we just played the way we were playing in the past 15 games, obvious to say we'd be
Yeah.
walking the league, and that's that's really tough.
There's too much change from the season prior to this season. And were you at the Nottingham Forest game? Were you there?
What was that one?
It was at home. It's 2-1, the first game of the season. Were you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Laura was there too, and I think we both agreed that the feeling was like it was whack in there. Like, it really was. Like, genuinely, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is not the vibe for the first day of the season." There was something
Yeah,
in
because
the air.
you wanted a 4-5-0 result, right? And I think they pulled
Yeah.
it back to 2-1. Well, did they equalise or come back to 2-1?
They came back to 2-1, like, at the
That's
very
it.
end of the game.
Alanga went on a long run, right, on the left, I think
Yeah,
it was.
like, and yeah, he just from our corner, they
Yeah.
came down and scored.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
really, when you go back to that time, even after we drew to Fulham, I remember my friend saying, "There's no way in a million years we challenge for the league, like dropping points at home to Fulham." And he was really, really like resolute with that. And I was thinking, no, we can do it. But what happened? Yeah, that first part of the season, it was stop, start, and then we somehow managed just to flick a switch after Dubai. But you know, Arteta has to take responsibility for that. And I think there was naivety. I don't want to keep on talking about Granit Xhaka, but naivety that you can replace someone like Granit Xhaka like that. That was naive in hindsight. You know, it was a case of, oh, we've got a really all-round midfielder who's kind of doing everything, scoring goals, defending well, linking up with Zinchenko, linking up with Martinelli, forming this really good left-hand side triangle. And then you kind of took all of that away for the potential of some more goals from Havertz, and it didn't come. And
yeah,
then, you know, and then then he was digging his heels in. And then you're kind of fighting a bit of a losing battle. And if you think about the productivity of our left-hand side and the drop-off of Zinchenko and Martinelli this season, so it's pretty drastic. You know, as I said, I'm a big fan of Zinchenko, and I really want him to stay and turn it around. But if you look at that left-hand side and compared to our right-hand side, it's black and white. And that's something I think from Arteta that's been a little bit naive to think, oh, I can just get rid of Granit Xhaka and I can just take Havertz and that's going to work. And it didn't work. And now, ironically, it's working for Havertz as a false nine.
not even just drop Kai Havertz into the left center mid and just make it work. Go to a weird diamond, bring in Declan Rice, put Partey at right back, take Gabriel out. No offense, I know people. I'm not trying to kick him, but we also started the season with Nketiah up front for like 8-9 games. You know,
Yeah, we did.
so that was already like Nketiah. Martinelli's not playing well. Freaking Havertz is there. Rice is in there too now. It's just always strange. Like, it all just was strange. And so we lost almost the first part of the season. And it took us a while to really get going. And I think that that's ultimately what cost us. We dropped points along the way, but it wasn't any specific game. But the games that we dropped points at the beginning of the season, I think were not so much due to us being a terrible team. It was just like, there was too much change. There's too much newness. I really go into next season not trying to experiment, but just like what we did this season worked, just put some better pieces in there.
Yeah. I mean, and when you say like we started Nketiah for 7-8 games, and like you say, I don't want to be disrespectful to him at all. I think he's a player with, you know, a good potential, and if he finds the right club, I do think he'll score goals in the Premier League. I really do. But yeah, when you're starting Nketiah, who's been at the club for 6-7 seasons with the same kind of goal ratio, and he's leading your line in a season where you want to win the title, that's pretty fucked up when you take a step back. Do you know what I mean? That's like Liverpool starting Rhian Brewster trying to win the league. Do you know what I mean? It's the same sort of thing. Like, and that, or Solanke at the time. But those players are usually sold and then they go develop somewhere else. So I think Arteta also found himself in his predicament where, because we're a little bit more self-sustaining than the Man City of, right, I've extended these players' contracts because I want to make some money for the club, but they also need to play these players to keep them in the shop window. And I think he probably tried that a little bit too much in the first half of the season, is giving Nketiah minutes, give some of these players minutes just to keep them relevant and try to find that spark in them. Because there is a bit of a spark in Nelson and Emil Smith-Rowe, especially, and in Nketiah. There is something there for sure. They're not terrible players. You know, they've shown us enough, but Arteta's trying to do that whilst also trying to be competitive, and I think he's probably learned the back end of the season is that, do you know what? No more token minutes, like no more gestures. Like if I can't trust these players, then fuck it if their value diminishes, and it is going to diminish massively. What you'll get for Nketiah, Nelson, and maybe even Emil Smith Rowe if you're going to sell him is considerably less than what you would have got for them last season or when they were playing a little bit. You know, there was hype around Nketiah 4 or 5 months ago when he was playing for England or called up in the England squad. You know, there was a little bit of a buzz about him, and now his value is probably sunken a little bit. So I kind of look forward to us phasing out those players and then just having a squad that Arteta deems as totally reliable, totally ready. And that means signing the right players. And I think with the likes of Trossard and Jorginho and Havertz, you know, they're all players with Premiership experience. So I think it's about getting those sort of players in the squad, and they can replace your likes of Nelson and El Neni and Nketiah, XYZ.
Yeah. Natalie saying like a good duo of Trossard and Havertz. I wanted to look at this while you were talking. I just wanted to look at what's the difference, what the difference has been between Havertz plus Trossard. Because as much as everybody's focusing so much on we lost Martinelli from preseason, especially like if you watched us play against Barcelona in preseason, you will have seen that Havertz and Trossard worked. Like it was very obvious from that game. I was like, okay, that works. But that doesn't include Martinelli. So people have focused a lot on, losing Martinelli, but I'm like, what has this duo given us? Because quite frankly, they've probably been our best attackers at the back end of the season. They really have, probably like the whole year, the 2024. And what that means for next season, and if Havertz continues playing up front and Martinelli and Havertz don't work together, then do we stick with Trossard? Do we need to bring in something else? Like what's going on? So the difference basically between Jesus and Martinelli versus Trossard and Havertz has been 5 goal involvements this season. 5.
5 more, 5 less.
5 more for Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus. So there is a difference, but it's not as big as I would have imagined. And also when you consider that there's obviously context to be applied. Jesus didn't play, for a large part of last season, and Havertz also didn't play up front for a large part of the season. But they, I do think that partnerships, and the team changing has to come into effect or come into play or at least be thought about, because if I don't anticipate Havertz just going away. I don't see Havertz just becoming like some rotational option. I could be totally wrong. But I saw, rumors of Sesko being one of our main targets. Sesko is 20. He's not going to start over Havertz. He's just not. And so if we were to bring him in and Havertz was to stay up front and Trossard is the better option, what does that mean for Martinelli? Like, how do you analyze Martinelli's season? Because
Look,
there's a huge focus.
I think this season Martinelli's been really, really poor. Like, I don't think there's any way to dress it up. I just think there's been a drop off. Even his cameo against Man United was a little bit flaky. Like, I just don't think he's in form, and I don't think he's confident. And I think when you go back to when Arteta first took over, there was a reluctance to play Martinelli, and I think he got taken off maybe at home against Man City when he switched off defensively, or he switched off for a goal. So I think there's some tough love from Arteta towards Martinelli, and I've got a feeling that Martinelli will be a high profile departure in the summer. I've got a feeling something will happen, because I just think ultimately Arteta wants something different on the left wing, because I think that's why he went for Mudryk, and that's why he's playing Trossard, who's more of a technician, and I think Mudryk is probably a hybrid of both. But yeah, I've just got a feeling. I've just got this feeling that he'll cash in on Martinelli. I like Martinelli, by the way. I think it's class, and I think he has the potential to be a great player or great goal scorer. But I don't know, just something's not right this season, and I just get the sense that Arteta doesn't love Martinelli. I know, ignore what Arteta says in the press about players, but I just get the sense that he's not in love with that sort of player, not the same way as Saka, for example, and. Yeah, I've just got this feeling that that he'll be sold in the summer for a really big fee. I might be wrong, and I hope he turns it around. And I just think he's in this part of his career where it's almost like he's not really developing as a footballer. I don't want to be too harsh on him. His overall game, it hasn't really improved. And his like dribbling hasn't really improved. His like one-on-one play hasn't necessarily improved. His like connection play isn't amazing. I know I was reading some like comparisons in terms of Trossard. Comparing Trossard to Lundberg, and
Yeah.
I get that from like from an effectiveness perspective. But as a player, Martinelli is probably a little bit more like Lundberg. Lundberg wasn't like this really fluent player. Like he wasn't. He was sometimes head down and like very pokey and scoring these like goals and these like late runs into the box. But he wasn't like a Perez. Obviously, he would stand on the ball and connect play and really give you that style. And I think Arteta wants something a little bit different from his left hand side, which is why he's pointing to Trossard. Maybe Martinelli can have a really strong pre-season and then bang, it clicks again. But there's just something there that I don't think Arteta loves. And I personally think Martinelli is going to be better through the middle. I think that's where he should be playing. Is through the middle, in and around the box, when he comes alive, scoring goals. I think that's his best position. Of course, when he's on form as a left forward, he's brilliant. But I do think having him in and around the box is where he'll do his best work.
Yeah, there's just something, again, I always look at it and go back to the origin. I'm like, is this person an Arteta signing? Martinelli is not an Arteta signing. And I think ultimately, everybody who's not an Arteta signing will always have a little bit of a question mark around them and whether or not I think Arteta wants them long term. Martinelli was already here, and we've gotten a lot out of Martinelli. I wonder if people are very comfortable with saying we've evolved past Gabriel Jesus, we've evolved past Zinchenko, we've evolved beyond them. But for Martinelli, nobody ever considers whether or not Arteta is evolving beyond him or doing things and putting players in places that don't suit him as much. Because I don't think the system really helped him out, but I also think that his limitations have made it such that he's almost like not functional in that position whatsoever. Because it's been like that. He's been basically not functional, and that's crazy. Like he
But
hasn't.
yeah, there's definitely been that lack of domination on the left hand side, hasn't there? When we think about when Zinchenko would have almost like them boxed in, and we would just play around fullback. To Martinelli would get so many chances to run behind and take on the fullback one-on-one when there's space. There's good distances where you can really drive at him. But that hasn't happened this season, and I think that's why he's reverted to Trossard, because there you just get more of a composed footballer with maybe better ball retention and someone a little bit more efficient in the box this season. I might be wrong, and hopefully Martinelli turns it around. But I've got a feeling we'll have to make room and make some big money for a big money marquee sign. And I think he's the player that you could look to cash in on.
Yeah, I imagine there'll be at least one or two players that we're not really thinking about that end up maybe getting some looks this season or this summer. So we'll see how that unfolds. Sam is asking or kind of talking about Declan Rice at 6 versus 8, which has kind of been like a major debate this season. He's basically saying that we need to resolve it, and he thinks that he's better as a 6 than an 8. We need better chance creation up front. I have thoughts on this. And I just am like, why are we so fucking obsessed with what position he's going to play? Is it not obvious that the 6 and the 8 are constantly switching? Sometimes one is higher than the other. Sometimes we need Declan Rice deeper. Sometimes we need him more as a box-to-box. Like, I think we're obsessed with the position name when our best period of this season has kind of come with Declan Rice bouncing between being deeper, being higher, and even Odegaard being on the left and the right. But it's like the obsession with what position, I think, is taking away from maybe a bigger point, which is we'll be more positionless probably next season. We need somebody in midfield that's going to allow Odegaard and Declan Rice, one, to balance the midfield, but two, going to allow them to do what they do best. Odegaard needs to be relieved of his defensive duties. I think him coming deeper sometimes and playing more like a double pivot takes away from what we want to do up front. Declan Rice needs somebody that allows him to be able to use his athleticism to kind of bounce between being more defensive and more attacking. And I think that player, we kind of know what that player looks like. It'll be somebody kind of like Jorginho, kind of like Partey, something in between there. And it's just not that big of a deal. Like, I don't really see the obsession with, is he a 6 or is he an 8? Because I don't think we'll ever see him just play one position. Like, Odegaard does not play one position. He's not a number 10, and he's not always a number 8. He just kind of plays the Odegaard role. I don't even know what the Odegaard role is. Sometimes you see him receiving the ball off of Raya. Like,
Yeah.
crazy. Sometimes you see him popping him up on the left. Sometimes you see him widest right. Sometimes you see him in the right half space. It's whatever, but what are your thoughts on this? Do we need to decide whether Declan Rice is going to be our Rodri or not, or accept a more fluid midfield kind of look?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, it seems that we're gearing towards more of a fluid midfield look, because if you think about last season, it was very much Partey in that space, and then then Odegaard and Xhaka either side, and it felt like that. And I think fans are a little bit obsessed over the Rice position, because I believe we want him to be that number 6, because that's what you associate with like a Vieira, and it gives you that like power, and it's like he's a number 6 and he sits in the middle of the pitch and he dominates midfield. Whereas when it's number 8, it's slightly more different. There's more roles to that, and I think there's a Rice versus Rodri thing. So as an Arsenal fan, you want him to sit in the middle of the pitch and be the centerpiece, which I personally think is probably, I think is actually his best position. And Gary Neville said the other night on Overlap that he sees him as more of an 8, and I just see him as more of an all-rounder. So I prefer him. I prefer him to see him centrally. But then, like you say, if it's more fluid, then you'll see him in both places. I think it's more about who do we get, to either play the 6 or play the 8, and I think that dictates what we do. If you can find a left side version of Odegaard who has the ability to, understand the bite of the game and the pace and the aggression, but can also create, then Rice as a 6 is class. But if you can't find that, we've tried over the past 2 seasons with Emil Smith Rowe as a left 8 and Vieira as a left 8, and we keep trying, and we can see for some reason it doesn't work. So you need that hybrid player. But I mean, it doesn't really matter for me about 6, 8, 10, whatever number he is, or however he plays. He's fucking class, and it's such a shame that he won't have a league title, or looks like he won't have a league title in his first season for Arsenal, because he deserves it. He's been absolutely incredible, and this is what I mean about making the right signings. We're now at the level where we can make the right signings, and we can go and get the big boys, and I think we'll do that now. Gone are the days of taking gambles on Tavares, Lokonga, whoever it is, and Mahrez and all that stuff. We don't need to do that anymore. Those days are behind us. So hopefully we can get someone to work with Rice. And if you get that with Rice and Odegaard, and you get a good midfield partner, whoever it is, you're talking about a fucking incredible central midfield. Like, Odegaard is ridiculous. And I know I don't feel like we say it enough, and I don't feel like he's appreciated enough. Maybe he is, but the guy is absolutely unbelievable. And him and Rice as a pair have been a joke this season. So sort out that Partey or Jorginho replacement long term, and we're winning.
Yeah, it's such an important position. I know everybody is focusing very heavily on striker and needing a winger. And I get that, because those are the exciting positions, and it feels like we bought in this position quite a bit. But I cannot stress how important it is to bring in another top quality midfielder. I don't think we've bought in anybody that's on, like, there's nobody else that we can put in that position that's on the same level as Odegaard and Rice in terms of the everything that they require, like availability, the levels that they can play at, consistency, the way that they can do multiple things. And I'll ask you guys in the chat, because there's 190 of you guys in here. Which one of Arteta's positions only does one thing? None. Like, it's really none. You could probably say maybe the center backs, but even they don't just play like traditional center backs. They have to sometimes, play deep block. Sometimes they play high lines. Sometimes, Saliba's more central. Sometimes, Saliba has to go out more wide. Like, there is no position besides maybe the center backs that just do one thing. So we're not just going to be able to bring in a number 10 or just a number 6. Whatever player is going to have to be able to kind of be a more complete player. They cost more. It's harder to get it right. But there's several players out there that I feel like are perfect for it. So hopefully we get it done. But those two, Odegaard and Rice, I'm so happy that we'll have them for their peak years because that solves a lot of
But yeah,
problems.
fingers crossed we do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cross. I do
because
think we'll have them for their peak years. They're
yeah,
already 25. Like I
yeah.
think,
No, I do, but I know Real Madrid are bubbling, man, and they're. I think Real Madrid are going to try to go for this whole Galactico thing again, but really, really go big on it. And I have a feeling that there'll be an English contingency at Real Madrid pretty soon. I've got this
well,
feeling with
I
like
think,
Trent and yeah,
yeah,
I think yeah, and
that's more
it's
with
one. Sorry, it's
actually.
one club that like I don't know, like they could take Saka from me, Real Madrid, and I wouldn't be as mad because I'm like, oh, it's Real Madrid, man. It's like Real Madrid. So it's like there's a thing where you think, well, yeah, you can have him because it's Real Madrid. Like, look after him. But yeah, yeah. I mean, like you say, we've definitely got them for their peak years for sure. But yeah, have to make sure that we're winning stuff because we don't want to lose them.
Actually, when Saliba was playing against Old Trafford, or not Old Trafford, at Old Trafford against United, the only that I in like it flashed in my head very quickly. I was like, he's so a Real Madrid player. He's such a Real Madrid player. It's so over. It's never been more over. I was like,
Yeah,
it's just so obvious that at some point he'll play for them. I mean,
you can imagine him in the white kit. You can literally
yeah,
see Saliba in the white kit. It's like it's a match made in heaven.
yeah, it really is. Like he's so good. Burmy says fluidity is key. Players that can perform multiple roles creates unpredictability, which can work to our advantage. Junior says Martin needs to do plays sometimes from the left of the pitch because this is way for the passes like Havertz against Chelsea, and those passes 100% can happen with him not having to play left center mid. There's like an obsession with moving Odegaard to the other side. Again, I think too obsessed with the position. He has to play left center mid in order to play those
But
passes. He's on the
you know
right.
what?
That pass
Yeah,
guy.
but
Like, come on.
you know why that of that obsession, right? It's because people have Vieira and Emil Smith Rowe agendas.
Yeah.
So they need to move they need to move Erdegaard to the left 8 so they can try to facilitate Emil Smith Rowe Vieira. But like you say, he does move there, and I think did he assist the goal for Declan Rice against Luton? I think he did. Did he put that cross in from the left hand side? Yeah. So you see those moments when we're really dominating teams and he can kind of shift over to the left. But yeah, from that perspective, if it's not broke, you don't need to change it. And you know, he certainly is running things as a right 8.
I'm like, you guys are just too obsessed with it. Like, I don't get why we have to move, but I remember the conversations about Emil has to play next to Saka because when we played against West Brom in the snow, that was the best we've ever played, and it was just that was 2021, child. Like that is so it's expired now. Like we won't even play like that anymore. I understand the thought process because when you have a lefty on the left side, they don't have to think as much. So you can get those passes off a little bit easier and the angle is different. Totally understand that, but he doesn't have to move positions in order for it to happen. And we wouldn't be having these conversations if Xhaka was playing in left center mid. We wouldn't. I'm sorry, we wouldn't. Um, Thanks for the super chat, Brian. Brian says, has Kai done enough to be starting striker going into next season? It's a really good question. If not, how should the striker position be handled going forward? Ari, what do you think?
Well, I don't. It's so hard, isn't it? Because he's really impressed up front. And if you go back to his debut against Man City in the Community Shield, he gave us something totally different. He occupies centre half so well, even though he's tall, but he's not like necessarily physically big, if you know what I mean. He doesn't use he doesn't appear to use his physical attributes aggressively, but he's just really, really good on the ball, holds it well, links play. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly an argument to carry things on because he's playing well. I do think you want a natural striker option. And as much as I love Jesus, I don't think he's that guy off the bench. So I think I think we keep him there simply because where else are you going to play him? He doesn't become a rotational player. I don't think you spend that amount of money on a player to be a rotational player. And the left 8 thing, I don't think we revisit because I just think it would just give Arteta, just more problems. And with Timber coming back, I think there's a chance to see something a little bit different in terms of how we set up. So yeah, I'm happy to lead the line with Havertz next season. I am. But one thing Havertz has to do is he has to have the same attitude for every game, because there's sometimes when even up front you're thinking, you're not really feeding this today, and you can feed it. And if you look at that first half against Chelsea when he was just not really there, and then second half he came out and he scored the goal he scored, which was like the 1-on-1. That was almost like quite Van Persie-esque. That was a through ball to him, and his first touch was good, and he kind of pushed away the centre defender, I think, and finished really, really well. And that's when he had some bite to his game. So happy for him to lead the line, but there has to be the expectation from him to score goals, almost every game. And yeah, I don't see why he can't do it. Really good player, by the way, and he's really turned it around, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I think the thing with Havertz is that, like, I'm looking at his numbers, and his numbers would say that he's had a good season. He's only really played up front for half of the season, but he has 12 goals and 7 assists, which is 19 goal involvements in the Premier League, which is a good, like, first season. It's not really about how many, it's the moments that we score. Sometimes we need someone that can score that goal in those moments, and we know what those moments are. Like a goal out of nowhere against Bayern Munich.
Mm.
He really didn't even get a sniff against Bayern Munich. Couldn't create. He's not someone that can just create something out of nothing. Um, Away at Villa, at home at Villa, against Villa. It was times like that where we're kind of not getting it, and then you just need someone to just kind of create something. So there's no doubt in my mind that if Havertz starts next season at striker, that he could get 15 goals next season, if not more. But are we still going to be having those games, that 5% that keep us from winning things, where we go with no goals? There's too many goals this season where we didn't score a single goal. And so he doesn't really solve that problem. Now, how do we solve it? I just feel like the midfielder is just so important. And then what we do up front depends on what's actually out there. Like, I don't think there's like an obvious winger out there that solves all our winger problems. Because Pedro Neto is a crock. If he wasn't crocked, that would make so much sense. Give Wolves 60 million for him. Boom, solved. We're good. But I don't see that player. So maybe we do go for a Sesko, and Jesus moves to the wing. I don't know. But
Mm.
our main problem is not how many goals we're scoring. We'll probably score 90 to 100 goals again next season. Our problem is the game changer thing. Do we have somebody that can create something out of nothing, has that X factor? I think we've seen the last 2 seasons that we don't have that. People thought it was Martinelli. It's not. It's not Odegaard. It's not Saka. These players, they're really good players, but they're not creating something out of nothing.
It comes
And
down to a style thing as well, though, don't you think? That comes down to our approach and how we play. Like,
yeah,
think about our goals. Like, I don't want to say our goals are very similar, but it feels like most of our goals are part of a team move, and there's not that spontaneous. I'm going to dribble around a couple of players and fire it in. Like, we play percentages, don't we? It's like, if you can pass it to this guy to increase the chance of scoring, then make that pass, and that's how we play. So yeah, I agree, and I'm not trying to, don't want to be too harsh on us, but when I think about like screamers this season, how many like individual screamers have we scored? Like, where
none.
someone's picked the ball up and
Saka against
I can
Forest, first game of this.
Forest. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? How many of those have we scored? And I think, it would be nice to bring that spontaneity into the team a little bit more. And I think we have that, by the way. So I think we do have game changers. I think it's under instruction that players play in a more controlled manner.
Do you feel
There's no way. Sorry, there's no way Saka can't pick up the ball and dribble around a couple of players and bang it. But that's not what we're doing. He's taking the ball inside. Ben White's overlapping. He's waiting. He's playing the overlap. There's no way Saka can't do more spontaneous things. But he's so effective because Arteta has him playing like an elite robot.
an elite robot? So basically, like, and I would love to know what you guys think in the comment section as well. Like, do you guys think, like, let's say the team doesn't change at all, but Arsene has this team, that we'd have more of those individual moments, we'd play with more freedom? Do we actually lack those game changes, or is it the way that they're being coached? Because I think you have a point. that it's not so much that they can't change the game, it's that they're being instructed not to. I still feel like we lack that. Even with freedom, I don't think anybody is reaching those De Bruyne, Gundogan type of level.
Yeah, I think of like Alexis Sanchez and that sort of player. Yeah, I don't think maybe we don't have that player, that
Yes.
style player. That's
Yes.
probably we don't have. I feel like Martinelli could be that sort of player because he's kind of a head down, chaotic shift and shoot, but he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't obviously have the the output of a Sanchez. But
Wasn't
with that,
or like he definitely wasn't like a Cesc, but wasn't he more technical than Martinelli? I feel like Martinelli lacks
yeah,
some
yeah, no,
refinement.
he had more finesse than Martinelli for sure. You remember when he would like jink in, and play like these little loopy back post crosses. So he definitely had that. But in terms of like, yeah, just the way he would head down, and then I think even when you think about the FA Cup final against Aston Villa, where it's just like touch and absolutely bangs it in from 25, 30 yards, or so it's more of those moments that we want. And with the Wenger thing, yeah, you're probably right. The players probably would play with a little bit more freedom, but that would be at our own detriment because we just concede a shitload of goals and players wouldn't know how to defend properly, and we'd be conceding from corners and conceding goals on counter attacks and transitions all the time. Whereas we just don't do that now. You know, we're more robotic, but it's much more for our reward. And yeah, and even without those game changer moments, we've still scored our most goals in the Premier League season, right? So there's still,
Yeah.
like you say, there has to be a bit of balance both ways. But yeah, we're certainly missing those Aguero moments or whoever it is where it's like, oh shit, that was unreal. Like we're missing that. And hopefully as we get better, those moments kick in. And yeah, we see more of those epic Sanchez goals or De Bruyne screamers.
Yeah, Jonathan K is saying that Mikel would freak out at at the Maverick style players. No one is allowed to roam like Vinny or Rodrigo. And I remember, when Martinelli had kind of, the debates about Martinelli were coming up again, and it was around the time where we were playing Bayern and against Aston Villa and against Bayern. I do think that he did not track runners in both instances, and we conceded in both instances. Kimmich just floats into the box. He's nowhere to be found, Martinelli. And then on the back post with Bailey against Villa. Now everybody blamed everyone else. It was Tommy and Vinny, or Tommy and Zinni. But I do still feel like he didn't do what he needed to do. Now the counter to that was, well, you don't see Vinny and Rodrigo tracking back. And I'm like, that's true. That's true. But also, are we pretending that Martinelli is on the same level as them? Like, genuinely, Rodrigo and Vinny are, I'm not saying this to like be mean to Martinelli, but they're levels above Martinelli. They just are, so I guess, yeah, that's something yet to be seen, is if Arteta were to go out into the market, first of all, would he ever buy those types of Maverick type players? And if he were to have them in his team, would he change the way that we approach games in order to allow them to have those? Because we don't even leave anybody up. When we are defending, we defend 11 men behind the ball, which is another reason why we're so good defensively. But you would never catch Vinny and Rodrigo back behind the ball. Like, it just doesn't happen. So would he change? Would he not? Is he going to buy more system players? It's yet to be seen.
Yeah, I think he would change, but it obviously depends on who the player is, right? And and their output. Because if you have a Vinny style player or Mbappe, for example, who's going to score you an obscene amount of goals, then it's likely that they won't have to do much defending. But it's interesting that because when you think about Saka, it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's because Saka is good defensively, but it feels like he doesn't have to do as much defending as Martinelli. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's a case that teams just exploit our left-hand side, which is why Martinelli has to make more defensive actions. But when you make a couple of mistakes due to like switching off or laziness, Arteta does not forget that stuff,
Nope.
and he will hold a grudge for a long time. I think he's okay with people making maybe the wrong decisions or the wrong pass or not executing, a shot or what it is. But if you're doing something because you've switched off or you're not alert, I don't think he appreciates that. So that's probably why Martinelli was left in the cold a little bit this season, because Arteta does not forget, because they are the fucking standards.
Social Join says you basically need top tier talent for our setup. Johan says Martinelli isn't even 23, y'all. He will get there. His last season wasn't an accident in terms of stats and forms. Listen, I don't know.
Sorry, just on that last one, you're right. We do need top tier talent, but it's also about top tier intelligence to be an Arteta player. You have to be like super intelligent. And if you think about the signings that Arteta's made and the players that have excelled, the Jorginho, Xhaka, Havertz, these are, really like intelligent footballers, as opposed to chaotic, head down, like, spontaneous footballers. These are guys who really understand the game. If you look at some of the players that we're signing, it's almost like there's so many potential managers in our team. You look at Ødegaard, you can imagine Ødegaard being a top coach. You can imagine Jorginho being a top coach. Declan Rice could be a top coach, because he wants like all-round intelligent footballers, which is why you see him sign players like Jorginho, players who aren't particularly fast, or a player like Xhaka Excel, who's not particularly fast, because he wants intelligent footballers to fulfill those roles, to fulfill those movements, to then help other players progress or other players score. So, yeah, we do need top tier talent, but we need the right personalities. That's what's going to get us over the line right now. Is the right personalities who can come in, who understand this league and understand what it takes to win the Premier League. And so that we have to select those players really, really carefully. And it's why I'm always harping on about signing players from the Premier League, because they understand what it's about. We're so close, man. We're so close to doing it. So close.
I think that's the thing too, is like the margins are so fine. We're really not that far away, but we're also still kind of far away. It's like a weird one, because it's just like there's no room for error. And I just feel like we're all naming all these different things. And I'm like, I really hope they get it right. Because like, it can't be all this. It can't be game changers and squad depth and a striker and a winger and a defender and another midfielder and we genuinely need to be like 2 or 3 players away. It cannot be all this. Like, it really cannot.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think we're looking at reasons why, it hasn't happened, and there's multiple reasons. I mean, essentially, if we didn't fuck about at the start of the season, we'd be fine. Okay, we'd probably win the league quite comfortably. But like you say, if we're leading a league position, how do we know how we're going to react? So I think that's the disappointing part, is that City were also off it the first half of the season, and we didn't capitalise early enough. But there's no doubt that we're close. But yeah, nothing's ever perfect, because nothing is ever finished. And I think it's important to know that. It just continues to roll. You'll always find things to enjoy, you'll always find things to question. And I think, the hard part is that we're really, really close. And then you've also got this nervousness about the players that we have and how long will they wait to win a league. And you obviously, from a fan's perspective, right, we're close. And we went through the stage of the phase of like fast forwarding and jumping the phases, right? And now we're here, like we're where we should be. So now it's the expectation that we have to win, because that, I feel like we go into next season now pretty much saying, okay, well, we need to win the league. And if we don't, it has to be really, really close. But we need to go out there and produce a 90-point season. Like we just have to. And that's the standards now for next season, as well as improve in cup competitions and Champions League. Yeah. So that's it. So I'll tell you, you've got to get us 90+ points, and you've also got to do better here. And that, that's not easy. So he has to make sure that we're ready to do that. And I think we will be. But there's no guarantees, and I suppose we have to take a little bit of thanks that we're there, or we're thereabouts. And it's just that getting to that next part, that next stage, which is winning it, which is the hardest thing to do in football, is to win the league title. It's harder than anything. So
I also think that Arsenal fans would have less stress around losing our players if we would win something. I really think this team needs to win a trophy, even if it's not the Premier League next season. They have to win something. And that's going to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I feel like if you're Bukayo Saka, Ødegaard, and Declan Rice, you are here to win the Premier League and the Champions League. FA Cup is great, but I don't think it papers over any cracks. If we come second next 2 seasons and miss out in the Champions League quarterfinals, semi-finals, whatever, but we win an FA Cup, I don't think that's I don't think that makes any difference to them thinking I've been successful at Arsenal. I really don't. I just think it's, oh yeah, I've won a cup, but that's not what they're here for. Like, they're really not. I think that they're here to win the league. And as a fan, I don't want to say it in a case of like dismissing those cup competitions. I'm kind of at the stage where I'm the same, because I saw it with Wenger. Like, the FA Cups were, of course, they're incredible and they're the best days out ever, and it's memories and it's brilliant because you can get one over your Spurs mates and go, oh yeah, another trophy. We're shit, finished fifth, but we got another trophy, or got knocked out by Bayern 10-2, but we got an FA Cup, and all these things, or whenever it was. But it's about like relevance and consistency, and that's winning the Premier League for me. Like, it really is. Like, there's no way this season, right? If we are leading the title leading the league, and then we bottled it in the last couple of games in the season, but we won the FA Cup, fans would be happy. But I wouldn't be happy.
I would. It's not even just happy. I'd be happier. You know, like this season, if like I knew that. Well, I mean, if would we have been in the FA? Yeah, if we were in the FA Cup final, that would mean that we'd be coming up against City, because we would have had to have beat Man United. We would have been in that game, or whatever. And then we would have had to beat Coventry, I think. So essentially, we'd be going up against City. If we were to win that, yeah, I'd feel a lot better about our season. I do think that the trophyless thing is getting to be a little, and you know what, I think it's also like not getting to finals, things like that. Because like, even like I think about like Chelsea fans and the way that they felt about Tuchel. Tuchel won Champions League, and that's fair enough. And that's also something that could also appease the fans a little, not appease them, but like, if you can't win the Premier League, at least the Champions League, try it. Some cup you need to bring home. But he was getting to loads of finals, and they were happy with him. They were finishing third. You know, I do think that like we're just not competitive enough in enough competitions for me. I really could, it doesn't fully paper over the cracks, but not even getting close to finals, not even being super competitive, like it's still like my main, it's crazy how we've had so
I can tell you're angry about something. You can tell.
Because it haunts me, the game against West Ham away from home in the Carabao Cup. I'm serious. Like, that game rattled me in a way that like other games did not, because I just couldn't believe what I had seen. Because
was that 3-1 when Ødegaard come off the bench and scored?
Yeah, when Ben White own goal, couldn't pass the ball to each other, looking shittier than life. Like, you know, and I'm just like, what the fuck? We're in London, so it's not like you had to travel far. You know, it's crazy. That needs to stop. That needs to stop next time. I'm not doing it. I don't want to hear shit about who we're playing. Oh, we got a tough. I don't give a damn. I don't care if it's the Karabuki. I don't care. You need to get to a final. Like, I'm tired.
Do you know what? Actually, I'm trying to think, because when I referenced the cup competitions, I suppose that was in our days of Wenger when we weren't particularly good, and those competitions felt great at the time because we won, but we were also still shit. I suppose if we're competing for the league and we know we're there, then an FA Cup is like, oh, cool. Well, at least this season wasn't a waste, and we're closer to winning the league. So I think you're right in that respect, because we're there or thereabouts. So winning an FA Cup is good for us because it just shows that we're at the big boys table and we'll be here to stay. What I'm not a fan of is like winning an FA Cup and then finishing like 8th or whatever. You know, it doesn't really.
Yeah.
That doesn't really matter to me anymore. We had that stage. Now I just want. Personally, I just want us to win the fucking league. Like, and I'll take a league. I'll take a league over a Champions League. I'll take a league over a Champions League and an FA Cup. I really would. I just want the Premier League. I want us to win the Premier League. So I'm all zoned in for that. And if any of these cup competitions distract us from that end goal, I'd prefer for us to focus on that end goal. And if we don't make that end goal, then that's the way it is. And kind of feels like that's what's happened this season. But yeah, I agree. And we've said it the way we.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying that like I'd rather than, it's just I need something to tide me over. You know how it's like before the meal, you need a little appetizer? That's a little.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I suppose I think fans would still, but then fans would still be, oh, you know, all this money spent, blah, 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 and one FA Cup is all we've won, or 2 FA Cups. So I think you'd still get the same thing. And there's also this notion that rival fans will say, for example, Man United win the FA Cup, you know, oh, they've had a better season than us, but we know we're on the right trajectory to winning the league. So I think cups with context are important for me, or cups with foundations of success are what it's about. So yeah, in that respect, I actually agree with you, and I take back what I said. We should be winning cup competitions, but let's make sure we bring back the league.
Premier League clubs are to vote on a proposal to scrap VAR from next season. Resolution formally submitted by Wolves to abolish the system, plus will be on the agenda at June 6th. Any rule changes needs 2/3 majority, 14 out of the 20 members to pass. Listen.
Canon club breaking news. It's incredible.
I don't know
So
how
sorry, are Wolves pushing that, or is that a proposal from who?
I think Wolves are pushing it, but it was Ornstein who
Right.
exclusive. So I don't think they'll abolish it, but I do think that it hasn't really. They get more right than they do wrong, but the consistency at which they get things wrong, I think, is more than what people expected. And we're still just dealing with the same things that we would have been dealing with if they had not had the technology, which is human error. It has not taken away the human error in most things. Like they really need to, like, I know it's like they don't want it to be so like automated that people lose their jobs, but genuinely getting automated offsides and things like that would really help because they're getting a lot of shit wrong still.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, at the time, I was all for VAR because I think managers lose their jobs over referee decisions. You know, clubs get relegated. People lose their jobs within clubs. It's huge. Like a referee mistake can change a player's life. It could change a manager's life. It's real detriment to a clear error. And so I was all for VAR, and I was all for games being delayed. I was like, well, it's all about getting to the right decision. I didn't mind as a fan being in the ground and not knowing what's going on as long as the right decision's being made. But when you wait so long in a game, or you stop the game, you take the emotion out of the game, and then you keep getting decisions wrong, then I'm like, well, this isn't great. I'd still keep it, but they just need to make things better. Because this season there's been too many high profile fuck ups this season. Going back to that Liverpool goal at Spurs and stuff, and Wolves have been stitched up, and those penalties that Everton away, was it for Nottingham Forest? Ashley Young, when he made like 2 or 3 fouls, and then Ashley Young the same night is on Twitter like taking the mickey out of the decisions or having a laugh, and I'm like, it's a bit of a joke, really. So that's the problem. Yeah, and it's obvious to say you got the referees who make the mistakes. You now put 3 of them in a room, and they make more mistakes. It's fucking obvious. Like, it's obvious. Like, when you think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought for some reason it would be like these, like, intelligent, like, scientists, like, in this VAR room, like, saying, this is a foul, this isn't a foul. But it's not. It's the same people who still have their own personal bias, who still protect certain players, and will still protect their referees and protect their mates. And because Ashley Young is an old school English player who works hard and speaks like a bit of a geezer. He gets the benefit of three really obvious, or 2 really obvious penalties. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's mad when you think about it.
When you think about how much clubs lose off of the back of these decisions, I mean, as much as we're bitching and moaning and complaining, we are very, we are blessed as fans because we don't really have to worry about relegation. But the teams that have to worry about relegation, they lose so much off it. Like, these calls are very costly. And I do think that, some of the clubs, especially at the bottom, will be looking at this like, nah, this isn't working for us. I'm sure City will make sure that they cast their vote for absolutely, because I don't think I've ever seen a VAR call go against City. I don't think please find one. Please find one.
Do you know what? City last night, they were really fucking annoying me as well, because when someone makes a foul, it's like, even for the Wolves, the penalty they got versus Wolves the other day, when it was, a collision, the way they just gathered around the ref like the geezer shot him. I was like, what's going on? And even last night, a couple of the challenges, and they're just like bang, hounding the ref, and they certainly get the benefit of VAR. I mean, let's be honest, we've been quite lucky with the VAR this season as well. I think we've had some decisions go our way for sure, and certainly some go against us. So I don't want to act like we're we're the victims here at all. And Gary O'Neill has every right to be angry because Wolves have been stitched up plenty of times.
Most probably. And you know what the funny thing is, Forest probably think it's them, but a lot of the things that they're bitching about actually, like,
Yeah,
you know, like sometimes they haven't gone against them, but those ones that you're talking about definitely did go against them. So I can understand that for sure. It's crazy. Last but not least, I do want to like wrap up with, you know, somebody had mentioned the let me see, I started. Neil said, have we spoken on the Partey and Jorginho conundrum? What is the Partey and Jorginho conundrum? Do you know what it is?
no, I know the first party's leaving and Jorginho staying, so I reckon that's the conundrum solved, right? I can't see. I
Like, is
can't
it a
see.
conundrum or is it just an eventuality? Like, you know, it's something that we all kind of probably know. I feel like that's why, you know, I did see some people were making it as though like Jorginho staying was some like really bad thing. And as someone that had the meltiest of meltdowns when he signed, I was actually happy when I saw the news because I'm like, okay, cool. Like he takes the El Neni role. You need experience in your team. You need calm heads. You need that. You know, as much as people try to act like it's not important, it is important. And I think that he's earned his spot. Like there was a period of time where we were in the trenches, like where he really helped us. Like he was a part of us maintaining a title challenge. There was a period where we had to beat Liverpool at home in order to stay in the title race. This title race that we're mourning is only really something that we're mourning now because he came into the team. And Arteta finally like moved to the different system, and we saw that, and that worked for a while. And so I do think Jorginho has earned his spot. I think some people are still wanting Partey to have some role, but I just have to ask people like, is it enough for a player that's on starting wages to have played 3 good games this season? Because really, he had what 5 games where he could have played for us. Um, from the time he came back into the team he played against Luton. He played good against Luton, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Spurs, and United, I think. Maybe
Yeah,
one more there.
he was terrible. He was bad against Man United. Well, not bad, but he certainly
Um,
wasn't on it against Man United, was he?
and we got 3.5 good games from him. And
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll have a really good game against Everton, but you know, is that enough? Like
It's
is it
mad, isn't it, that the party thing? I remember years ago when we were speaking about Thomas Partey, and I said, I know he's good, but is he that good? And
I
everyone was like,
remember us having like these conversations, like, and this is why when people are like, you hate him, I'm like, you guys don't remember like 2 years ago.
oh,
I
you
was
loved him.
I was like, you have to keep him. You have to keep him like
Yeah,
he's,
yeah,
but you reach your breaking point when you go through. Honestly, when he let De Bruyne just run past him at the Etihad, that was pretty much it for me. And then like he let Lavia come up in his house and own him, a 19-year-old. You know, when we played against Southampton, we drew. It was just too many. It's like, yeah,
mm,
but in the run in, like, what are you doing? You know, and he's just injured too much. And then this
yeah,
season, it was like clockwork, bam, out. You know, and you can't defend it. And I just have an issue with players that never play being put on a pedestal, but players that actually have to go to the Etihad, to Anfield and shit and play these games get killed. But it's like, yeah, but if we had just had so and so, yeah, but we seen what we were like when we had so and so. So and so didn't play good. We've seen it.
mm,
So why are they
yeah.
always on the pedestal? And it's not just him. You know, as an Arsenal fan, are you not tired of like always wishing somebody was fit? I'm tired. Like I'm exhausted. So
Yeah, no, I agree. What do you think we do in terms of like his transfer fee? What do you think he generates? Do you think he'll go to America or Saudi, or do you think he'll stay in Europe, Barcelona?
well, I don't think that Edu went to Saudi Arabia to talk to those teams for nothing. You know, I think he definitely went over there to see what they would be interested in. I think Partey would be a good like acquisition for their league. I think he needs a league where it's slower and he doesn't have to play as many minutes. I just don't think he can hack it in a physical league. He just hasn't been
Mm,
able to really adapt to the levels that you need physically for like a Premier League. So I could see him going back to Spain. Not sure where, what team, but I could see him back in Spain, or I could see him Saudi. But that will definitely that will change what we could get for him. For a Saudi team, we could probably get 30 million with 1 year left. Spain, you're looking at pennies with
Yeah.
left on
Yeah,
his team.
it's such a shame, isn't it? Because when he first came over, it was like finally we've replaced Vieira. It was like we've finally done
Yeah.
it. We've got this enforcer in the midfield, and then then you realise, oh well, this is why I always say, like when we sign players from European leagues, that of course be excited, but until you see them playing in this league, you don't know how it's going to go because this is not your normal league. You have to be ready for it. And with regards to Jorginho, yeah, I mean, I was happy with the contract extension. If we decided not to extend his contract, I wouldn't have been particularly sad, because whilst I think he's a really good player, I don't think he's irreplaceable. But obviously, his voice within the dressing room is really important, and it is almost like that sideline coach when he's warming up. So I certainly think he offers huge value within the squad. But as he gets older, I know he doesn't rely on his pace, but as he gets older, he's very much a game state player, right? It's only certain games you want to use him. Sorry. And so as he gets older, it is also a case of those game states become less and less, right? Because he's only going to get slower. So it's just about using him in the right moments and making sure that we have someone else to replace Declan Rice if Declan Rice is out injured or struggling or for fitness. Do you know what I mean? It's making sure we have someone who can also come on in central midfield who isn't just that type of player, who is more energy, more competitive. I know El Neni isn't the player, but just someone of that dynamic who has a bit more movement. Even against Man United at Old Trafford, I was like, I feel like I wouldn't mind seeing El Neni on the pitch now because they're having a bit too much of the ball, and I need to see some more hard work. You know? Do you know what I mean? Does that
Yeah,
make
no,
sense?
I get what
Like
you're
a little
saying.
bit more energy, a central midfielder with a bit more energy who we can bring on to replace a Rice or whoever it is.
Yeah, I think we need to give those particular wages to somebody who's going to be available 90% of the season, like Odegaard and Declan Rice. They deserve a partner that's going to be there all the time. And I've you know, I think Thomas Partey has some things to his game that are very hard to replace. But genuinely, if you get somebody who's even 5 to 10% less talented, you will get more than what we've gotten in the 4 years from Thomas Partey if they're fit for 90% of the season. And so whether that's Bruno Guimaraes, who we've been heavily linked to, or this João Neves person who, we've been linked to this morning, genuinely, if they're fit and they're really talented, it'll be fine. Like, it genuinely will. But it just has been a very weird signing because he just hasn't played enough football. And
Mm.
that's like
What are we saying about Bruno G though? I don't know. Something doesn't sit right with me with Bruno.
I mean, people are like, I feel like I know that people are like, but he hit Georgie over the head. And I get
Yeah,
that.
I'll be honest. That's me. I'm just like, well, you
Like,
can't do
I know
that.
that's he hit Georgie. He hit Georgie.
And
But the man,
didn't he take shots at us as well at his reveal video, right? And his Twitter reveal
yeah,
video, or wasn't it?
but I
Yeah, that's
feel
it.
like it's because because Newcastle fans are funny because they're like, well, there's no way that he'd leave us for Arsenal. And I'm like, he absolutely would jump out of a burning building, like straight into our arms. Like,
Yeah, let's come on. Yeah,
yeah,
Newcastle had their time. They had their Champions League fun, and now they're
yeah,
back to
yeah.
mid-table. So yeah, I mean, he definitely can, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly a very talented player. He's someone that has more emotion and might give you those moments centrally as well. So yeah, definitely a good player, but I don't know. I've always got this thing where if you slag off Arsenal or you're a bit of a dick, I find it hard to
Yeah,
love you straight away. But I'm sure I will.
I can definitely see that. I mean, he's definitely somebody that I feel like some people it will take like warming, but the first time that he scores a really good goal, people will fucking forget about it. Like, I'm
Yeah, true.
telling you. And I would still prefer him over the higher ceiling, younger João Neves, just because that, like, first of all, how many Benfica players have not done well, like, after these big transfer fees? Um, and we kind of are in our win now. And I'm not sure that bringing a 19-year-old would be the best use of 90 mil, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Um,
Unless it's guaranteed, I know nothing's guaranteed, but yeah, yeah. Well, actually, no, it has to be guaranteed. Unless we know for certain that player's going to come in and do a job, then yeah, I don't think we have the time for experimental signings. And if we do, they have to be an extra. They have to be that additional signing. We have to get those, like you say, 16, 17 players in place that we know can hit the ground running straight away. And then if you have the money to add those wonder kids and you can take a gamble, then yeah, go for it. But I think the Conga, Tavares, Vieira, there are 3 examples there of players with huge potential or high potential, all well spoken about from everyone, from Vincent Kompany to everyone speaking about Fabio Vieira, and they've shown that this league isn't for everyone. So yeah, if you want to win the league, man,
I still hold a grudge against me. I still do. That fucking blockhead went out there and told us that Sambi was the next Yaya Toure and then wouldn't even take the guy on loan. Oh, man.
Yeah.
When he got relegated, that big R was next to that, but next to Burnley, I was like, hold that. Like,
do you know what that is though? That's just managers. That's just people talking on shows, isn't it? When you think about it, it's just them just saying, "Oh yeah, he's great," and what's he like? Oh yeah, he's a bit like this, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's just like standard football punditry talk where we hang on to every word they say, and because it comes from a place of history and and they're actual footballers, you think, oh yeah, well if he said that, he's going to be class. He's definitely going to be class, and he got there and he's. I mean, listen, he's had an okay season at Luton.
yeah,
He hasn't been terrible, but yeah.
But
my example is that no more
gambles.
gambles. Yeah, no more gambles. Like let's
No
get the
more
finished products.
gambles. And Tony was just asking just before we got out of here, Zinni moving to center midfielder as like a third option? Still getting a new center mid. Feels like a cross between J20 and Partey. Can play right center mid, left center mid with Rice and actual fullbacks behind him would be great. I'm going to be real. I don't think there's any way that Zinni can be salvaged. I do think there's a reason why he's never played midfield for Pep or Arteta because they've ruled it out. I think he'll be, if there is like a big out, of a player that's not an Nketiah type, it's him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Zinchenko is a player that he strikes me as a sort of player that will hop around elite clubs. I can see him going to Bayern Munich. I can see him going to those clubs and just winning things and just being that player has like won lots in all these different countries. But yeah, I mean, like I say, I really fucking love Zinchenko, and I don't want to write him off yet. I think that would be unfair. And when you think about what we've been through with some players who had a real redemption arc, I don't want to just say he's done, but it does feel like, it feels like similar to something like Ramsdale, where Arteta just sees something where he can improve upon. I think with Zinchenko, he's seen that we need to improve in that position. And you're right. I'd love to see him try that left centre mid position personally, because I think he's probably quite similar to what we had before in Xhaka. But there's a reason why he hasn't played there before. And if then you're playing him in that left 8 or left central midfield position, the idea of him playing inverted from left back is for numerical advantage in midfield. And if you're playing him there, but then Tomiyasu doesn't give you the same thing, or is not as comfortable in midfield, then you may as well just get a better left-sided midfielder. But yeah, I'd hate to write him off just yet. I personally really hope that he turns it around, but I can appreciate that it looks like he'll be on his way out because Arteta has not used him. Even against Man United, I'm thinking, well, we could probably have a little bit more control in this game. We're not really playing very well. Let's get Zinchenko on. And even against Bayern Munich away. And what was strange about the Bayern game was Zinchenko came on for Kivior, right, in the first leg and really helped us, I thought. Sane suddenly had a different problem to worry about. When Sane was playing, he just pinned Kivior in the first half and almost embarrassed Kivior. Whereas when Zinchenko came on, Sane had some defending work to do and had to, work out whether to follow Zinchenko or stay where he was. And then in the second half, we didn't use Zinchenko. And I thought that was a mistake because he was a player that can help us progress the ball and help us move it. So I think he's been, I don't want to say mismanaged by Arteta. I think there's been a few times when he could have had a few more minutes.
I don't think Arteta knows how to, because he can't switch up quickly. And I feel like he's like, when he's scared.
Yeah.
Because he can't get it, and like Arca's saying, our midfielders are dual winners. And if you're not a dual winner, you need to have excellent awareness. And that's where, the Jorginhos and the Xhakas come in. Neither of them were particularly fast, and they could be, but their awareness is so good that they're in the right positions to win the duels that they can, but they don't expose themselves in the other direction. And that's kind of Zinchenko not only cannot win duels, but his awareness is off. And the last place you want somebody with a lack of awareness is down the gut. And so I can just see him being,
He's such a good footballer, though, man. He's such a good footballer. So good on the ball. So good. But yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Okay, guys. We have had a little therapy sesh. Not really sure what we talked about, everything and nothing all at the same time. I'm sure
We
we'll
didn't
have.
even talk about Spurs, did we? Which was a good thing. We didn't even mention the game.
Honestly, I crashed the watch along when they got the penalty. I said, I'm out, guys, because it was already painful. Like, it was really painful. So I really didn't want to do it anymore. But yeah, I think we'll have many of these conversations from now until when the window opens. So, we didn't get to touch on like everything, because I also saw somebody had taken screenshots. If you need a mystery solved, call an Arsenal fan, because Edu took a picture with somebody inside the room where he has the board with all of the Arsenal players in like our depth chart, basically. And they took pictures of it and blew it up so he could see what the plans were. And like,
for this season.
For this season, and then it like showed like where the depth is needed, because it showed basically that Timber is depth at right back, which I told you guys, but you didn't fucking listen. You guys were, no, he was always meant for the left. No. But I wanted to talk about that too, but we didn't get to it. So yeah, but make sure you guys smash the likes, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and all that kind of stuff. And we will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.